I'm going to start with you because I'd love to get your thoughts on, from the council meeting on Tuesday, the survey results, economic development survey results. That was a little interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very interesting. I'm very happy that Mackey and the EDB put that together. It gave us some great insight. I understand we had close to 1,000 people respond, which is really good for that type of survey. I know it was put out online, and I think maybe that helped. And a huge percentage of the people that responded were residents, but there was still 20% or so in the outlying area, so that was good. You know, it was very interesting. You know, roads came up. Obviously, people want better roads, more places more retail places to shop, housing, some different restaurants. So really solidified, and really I think it helped everybody on our economic development board and the council really understand that we're on the right direction. So many things that people are working for is in concert with what the citizens are asking for, which is good. And tonight at 5:30 at the community center, if you'll recall, 60 days ago I had a meeting with the EDB and Mackey and all the different Main Street, the utility, somebody from the hospital, the school district. And tonight is a reconvene meeting at 5:30 at the community center, which I'm very happy to say there's like 25 people coming back tonight, and they were kind of tasked with, we came up with some issues that night, and so they're coming back with maybe some solutions and whatnot. So I'm excited about that. You know, it's very interesting as the results came out, the results came out, you know, of course, for businesses as well. And this is where, you know, it's changing, and I think sometimes people, when they see these things, they see the change is isolated to Marshfield, and it's not. This is happening everywhere. The country buying pattern is completely different. So, you know, we heard that Hub City Adventure went out of business, and you know, those things are going to happen, and yet on the other side of this, we see that we've lost, you know, that we've lost businesses this year. We've also had many businesses expand, but at the end of the day, how do you value your economy is wages are growing, and there are literally hundreds of thousands of jobs available. So that has got to be figured out, and I believe, you know, we're gonna be able to get that done. But it's not just isolated here in Marshfield. You know, people throughout the country are buying on the Amazons and online and things like that. It's easy for people to sit home at night when they're watching their shows and shop, and that is affecting our retailers. So I'm very optimistic by it. I'm really glad that it was put on. I think it was well done.
Yeah, not much to add to that because I think you did a good job covering it. The only thing I'd say about retail is this idea that people will say that they want more stores, and they do, but then people who are looking at developing stores will think, okay, if I put this kind of store in, are people going to come? Are they still going to do Amazon? Are they still going to, you know, do it when they're in Wausau, those kind of things? So it did give us a good idea of the kind of things people would like to see, and retail and restaurants were among the top. But it's still a challenge when people are trying to decide, can this type of business work in Marshfield? And I think in many cases it can. But at least it gave us an idea of what people sitting at home would like to see to make this a community that they would be more excited about.
You know, and I think the hard part for retailers is realizing that in some instances, in many instances, retailers are competing with themselves. And you know, you look at Office Max. Many times you would go in there to get a product and they wouldn't have it, so they would tell you go home and go online. Well, now you just competed against yourself, so you're going to have an issue. Many times the issues, the product at the same store is a little bit cheaper online because they don't have the employee overhead and other things like this. So that's a very difficult thing that I don't really think has been discussed in the nationwide conversation yet, is when an individual company is giving better products and better prices online, you're putting yourself out of business. Yeah. So it's an interesting conversation.
And one final thing, this plays back into what Bob said a minute ago about the meeting tonight, the follow-up to the April meeting. We had some good conversation back in April about what people in their 20s and 30s want to see. I mean, a lot of city leaders, I'll be honest with you, whether they be on council or staff, are 40 plus. And we say we want to see more millennials and younger people stay in this community and raise families here. Well, what kind of businesses, what kind of restaurants, what kind of amenities do they want? And I think we are trying to make an effort now to find out more about that and learn more about what types of improvements in our community would cause people to stay here or move here if they are younger. That's part of being a vibrant community.
It's interesting too about that, as Steve brings up, I think appropriately so. I think the highest majority of folks that responded on the survey were between 30 and 45, or somewhere in there, which I think is really good that we've got that input. There are a lot of people in meeting tonight. I understand that the Howards are going to be there. There are a lot of people in Marshfield that really care and really love Marshfield and really are trying to make it better. You look at the investment that some of these people are making in downtown, and the companies here that are expanding, they're making a huge investment. You look at what our schools are doing. We've got a great school system. And sometimes when you go on into the social aspect and you see some of the negative comments that are always going to be there, you just wonder how those people that are investing their hard-earned money, their dollar, and they're out here trying to really make a difference, you wonder how that affects them. And I hope it doesn't affect them negatively, because there are people that absolutely love Marshfield. And we are seeing a growing trend. Even in a growing trend, you're going to have businesses go out of businesses. It's just the way it is. If you right now own a typewriter company where you make new typewriters, you better get a new product line. Because if you're not keeping up with the level of service or the marketing, there was a business a couple of years ago that went out of business here because they had a product and they chose not to have an online presence. And they didn't do any marketing to get people in the store. If that's the case, you're going to have great difficulty in business. So there's a lot to keep up with, but I believe that we've got the right entities helping. The other thing going along the lines of that is I really want people to understand that the city does not determine what businesses choose to come to Marshfield. Businesses out there, like a lot of people have said that, Red Robin and Texas Roadhouse and all these other places should come here. And it's like, they would come here if they see a market for it. And where's the market is when businesses here already are doing well. So the city, for instance, we just had a hotel come to, that we learned a week or two ago, that they are coming to town. The city's not involved in that. The city can't say you can or cannot come, and I don't know how people are getting that perception that is what the city is doing. We're Mackey, Marshfield Area Chamber of Commerce of Industry, they do so much to help the businesses that are here, because realistically the best thing you can do is help the businesses that are already here thrive. That should be your number one customer for them, and bringing in other things. So in the survey, they wanted more restaurants. I think that would be great. I think we've got a lot of great ones. But certainly diversity and choice is always good. So overall, not to go on and on and on, sorry. I think the survey was great.
So I guess a follow-up would be, now what? You take the survey results and do what with them? Do you act on them? Do you react to them in a way that shows that you're listening to people and what they want? And if so, how what are the first steps in, I guess, sort of reacting to what the feedback you got from the survey?
Well, it's very interesting. When we had our meeting with everybody 60 days ago, everyone was tasked, everyone, the different entities, the EDB and the downtown Marshfield or Main Street, were tasked with, okay, here are our challenges. What are you going to bring back? How are we going to attack those things? It's very interesting, as many of the challenges that were in there were also on this survey. So I'm hopeful to get that, but I believe that our EDB, Josh here, Development Services, and as well as Mackey are taking these things to heart. One thing we know for sure is we have to do something about housing.
Yeah.
We have to do that. I mean, we're just, as there's a big development going on behind Walnut right now, 244 new apartments, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom. But what people were looking for in the survey is single-family housing. So, and there's only, I believe, 70 lots still available. So this means somewhere between the city and private developers, we're going to need to help with development. So, for instance, if you want to go in and put a new subdivision or say you want to put in 20 homes, it is extraordinarily expensive for the developer to put in the infrastructure. So if we're really serious about wanting to do that, the city's going to have to look at participating in that to get that aspect there so that the builders will continue to build.
Yeah, I think adding to that on your question, Mike, I think you're not going to see at the next council agenda, how to get more restaurants to Marshfield. But what happens is this information is all kept handy and used when decisions are being made by these various bodies. For example, let's say that there's somebody comes forward and they want to build a new restaurant, and maybe they need the property rezoned, or they need sewer and water run across the street to this parcel that doesn't have it. I mean, those kind of things play into the minds of elected and appointed officials when they're saying, look, this is something that's one of the ideas that has been talked about. It's been identified as a community need. Maybe in this case it's worthwhile for the city to do these things or try to help with these things to make it happen. So in other words, it's good background to have in your mind and in the committee and council's mind as to whether or not certain things are going to receive more or less support when that time comes.
The other thing that is might be opening up a can of worms here is, but in building in general, and in business in general, as a city, as a municipality, you have rules, and we have great people in our, inspectors and whatnot. The inspectors are there to, if you have a blueprint that it's like this, and it's got to meet all the health requirements and safety requirements, they're there to make sure that all of those rules are enforced. It's a public safety issue. So inside a municipality, like Marshfield, it can be considered, oh boy, it's really difficult to deal with the city in regards to this. And this is enforced on us by the state. And we actually get audited, right, where they come in to make sure we've got all of our P's and Q's in place. You did the inspections, were there any issues, things like this. Now, but if you go outside the city, the municipality, into the other townships, they don't have that same regulation, and yet it's run by the state. So they'll get their initial permit, and then somebody will come at the very end and go, did you go by code and everything? We'll look around, it looks pretty good, and sign off on it. Well, where's the fairness to the municipality if we're held to this extraordinarily high standard? Now, nobody's ever going to give way to health and safety issues and things like that. But the difficulty that some of the builders have and the businesses have, it's quite frankly, it's silly. The state we have to do something about that. Or certainly we're going to start, it starts with communication, sending letters, and we're going to be doing that.
I was going to go to, did you guys, it says request to discuss possible disposition of the Hemlock property. Did you deal with that?
That was actually pulled at the request of the council member who had suggested it, Jason Zalewski. Here's really where that issue is at. If you remember back in October of 2018, after considerable discussion, after soliciting proposals, the city got one proposal from Habitat for Humanity. Ultimately, the council decided to just postpone the issue for 1 year, a minimum of 1 year. And you say, well, why would they do that? The hope at that time was that a year or more down the road, we'd start to see the school district's plans unfold, the new football field, what's the use of Beal Stadium going to be going forward, what are the traffic patterns changing as a result of some of these modifications in recreational amenities. And I think Councilmember Zalewski would like to talk about it again. There's neighbors asking questions as to where this might be going in the future. They have something at stake because they have abutting properties, but he backed off and said, let's wait a while yet before bringing this back. So there's a day coming when I'm sure we'll talk about that vacant parcel across from Beal, but it's not going to be right now. And quite frankly, I'm hoping that we will, before we have a good conversation on it, be able to have more information about the shifting that may be occurring with the school district's plans.
All right. Facebook Live for city government meetings. That was on the agenda too, right? Did you deal with that?
You want to start or you want me to start?
Yeah, that was, but that got pulled
Oh, it did.
as we wanted to wait until Mr. Witzel brought that up, and I think it's a good thing. We wanted to wait until the new committee was in that did get approved that night, and then can help with that, because there were some other issues there. We want to make sure that that needed to be tightened up. So for instance, you know, we don't know if people are going to be able to comment during the meeting. They can later when they put it on. You watch the whole thing and make comments, but there's issues about if it's being done live and then people are texting aldermen or something like that during an event. You can't have that, because then that becomes a public record. So we got to narrow that down and tighten up a couple of things, and you'll see it back on the agenda, either the next one or the one following.
Yeah, I don't think that Councilmember Witzel is opposed to this. He does think, though, that before we get into this water, that we should have a discussion and maybe a policy on council's use of social media in general. And it plays right into what the mayor was just saying. You know, if you're sitting at your desk during the meeting, are you interacting with people outside the building in terms of Facebook or, you know, Messenger, whatever? The city of Madison got in trouble for this in terms of during meetings, people were actually up front, elected officials were, you know, texting and they were emailing and they were Facebooking people. What do you think I should do about this? Should I vote for this? That's what I've heard. I haven't read that case, but that would be a violation of open meetings. So I think the whole idea is we want more people to see our meetings. Facebook Live will be a great way to do it. I guarantee you my two sons who are, you know, mid to late 20s, they would, if they lived in Marshfield, they'd never turn on cable TV, but they would look at Facebook to see what's going on. So we want the word to get out to people about what we're doing. It's another avenue for that. But we want to make sure that these questions are addressed so that we don't find ourselves in hot water in doing things the way that we're not supposed to, open meetings law violations, all that kind of thing has been addressed.
Okay, so I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't know. I saw it went 3 hours though.
No, it didn't. This meeting? No.
Yeah, how long did it go?
Even with closed session, it was only 2. The regular meeting
2
only went.
hours.
Yeah, even
Yeah,
with the open part was only maybe an hour and 20. I can touch on a couple things if you'd like me to.
I was gonna say, what were some of the other highlights then? Because I thought, well, the survey, I watched that part, but it didn't go that long.
Do you have anything you want to cover?
What else got all the highlights?
I'll just cover a couple things, and maybe I should have brought copies of our strategic plan. I can give them to you. You know, as I said when I was at the podium that night, government is really good at something that's not good, which is doing studies and plans and then putting them on the shelf. And you look back 3 or 4 years and you say, did we ever do anything with the downtown master plan? Did we ever do anything with the industrial comprehensive plan? No, but it looks really nice on my desk. You want to see what it looks? It's got a nice red cover, and it's really beautiful. It's next to my coffee cup when I walk in. Late in 2018, with the council's help and their blessing, we adopted a 3-year plan, and it says in 5 key areas: economic development, infrastructure, financial management, communications, and human resources. What are the goals for the next 3 years? Tangible goals. How are we going to attract and keep better businesses? How are we going to make this a place that people want to come to work and stay here? You know, how are we going to keep the streets up in times when we have limited funding? So we went through this plan and what we've accomplished in the first 6 months, and council got to see it in the context of the overall 3-year plan. And we told them that, you know, we said this before, we're going to give you a 6-month review every year, and at the end of the year, we're going to go beyond that, and we're going to say, here's what's been accomplished. Do you want to make any changes? Because the world changes. The mayor was just saying that, you know, before we were trying to promote multifamily housing. Well, now we've created a lot of multifamily. What about single family? That's becoming the shift. Millennials are back buying homes again, apparently. So at the end of 2019, we might say, you know what, this was a great goal, you know, back in December of 2018, but I'm not sure, is this still relevant now? Should we shift our time and our money somewhere else? So we're going to keep this to be a vibrant, living document and keep up on it and let the council know things are happening. Things are getting done and checked off the list so that you don't think these planning efforts are in vain.
Did you have anything to add to that?
No, not on that one. The plan that Steve did and that staff is doing, you really appreciate the time and effort that has gone into it. And I think it does it takes into account those different shifts. So I think that's a very positive thing that everyone is working on that. There was nothing, I mean.
Steve, what were the other, I mean, it was.
Well, I mean, you know, I hate to speak too much to this one because it's maybe more Rick Rams's issue as police chief, but he did come forward. You may recall back in the spring, the idea of maybe loosening some of the control of alcoholic beverages at downtown events. We had a wine walk, and that was a good trial where he said, you know what, people are walking from store to store and they get a little small glass of wine. By saying you can't have it on the sidewalk, we're basically encouraging them, for lack of a better term, I don't know if people really chug wine, but I mean to gulp it down because they can't take it with them out on the sidewalk. So we said, let's try as a sample, let's let people actually be on the sidewalk in these limited areas and have their little glass of wine. Well, now they came forward, Main Street's on board with it, and the police chief proposed it, that we allow some areas during Hub City days when there would be open containers allowed. And it's a real posture shift because the mindset most communities have, and rightfully so, you talk to city attorneys and others, you don't want open consumption of alcoholic beverages all over an event. You lose control. But the point here is he's saying, look, you know, if we have just a limited area, certain streets, and I think it started with the idea that people who are displaying a collector car for 6 hours, can they not sit there next to their car and have a can of beer? Is that really going to bust them when they're not doing anything wrong? I think what the police are saying that they know a certain amount of this goes on anyway. This way they feel like they can articulate it, identify where it's allowed, and monitor it in an effective way, and yet give a little bit more leeway without creating problems that come from excessive drinking. This doesn't mean people can go out and start drinking all over the place and whatever they want. It just says a very limited amount. If done in this way in these locations, we think that might be acceptable. And we'll see if Hub City Days in July produces some concerns or questions, it can certainly be revisited. But I think the wine walk thing showed that type of model, at least on a small scale, is effective, and hopefully it will be with Hub City as well. Beyond that, I'm not sure what else there really was. I mean, there's some budget resolutions. One of them is to continue the work on the towers for radio communications. Make sure that we've done the portable radios that I think Bob has talked about for police and fire. You remember a year or two ago, we were talking about officers and fire officials in Walmart, in Menards, in the high school, and they're trying to call out to their dispatchers, and they're not getting through. You can't have that. And I think that the mayor's been very supportive of this. He's strongly encouraged getting this to the finish line. We've got new portable radios for the police and fire, and now we're doing these towers. The combination is making it massively better than it was 2 years ago in terms of those areas of town that are haven't historically been very good to communicate out of, and certainly the interior of these larger buildings, making it much more comfortable for us to know that we're communicating and able to handle emergencies.
I think what's very positive about that too is that initially I believe that there was a movement to, well, let's start with the radios and then we'll do this and we'll do different budget things over 5 years. And I'm very happy with the way that it ended up going to a lease, because then you get all the updated equipment now, which is going to lead to safety of our officers and of course the citizens. So I think with the towers being completed, I think everybody's going to be safer.
Wanted to get your take on the helicopter on Wednesday night. I know you saw that and had a chance to see some of the buzz that created, and that was pretty cool for Marshfield.
It was awesome. We were just positioned just perfectly for when this thing came in, and it was, there were a couple of things going on there. First of all, it was a great baseball game, but when you just heard this loud thumping coming, it's like, is this an earthquake? And it just got closer and closer and closer, and you could see everybody there in the park. And the best part was the kids. They were just looking out in awe. And the things, it makes a roundabout and it comes back and then lands on one of the field, and then the guy in the back, helicopter goes down, he jumps out and he's got this great jumpsuit on and the helmet, and and kids and families start getting closer and closer to it. But so having that there was great, but man, I will tell you what, to see that going on at Jack Hackman Field with everything that Hackman was to Marshfield was just awesome. And there's nothing like seeing a kid when they are in amazement. And that's what it was.
Yeah.
And then they walked around the pilot, and it was awesome. It's awesome.
I think that was when they saw you, actually, when they were looking in amazement.
I don't have a cool helmet or a little microphone that comes out.
It's one of those quality of life things, though.
Yeah.
Great quality of life.
When you get to do something like that.
Great quality of life. And there's so many different, things that are taking place. You have the July 4th event coming on. There's the Hub City Days. There's a lot happening in Marshfield. It's amazing. Sometimes I hear there's not a lot. Man, if you just drive up and down the street on the weekend, there's a ton going on. So it's very exciting.
And I think, you remember 2 meetings ago, we had the time where the soccer team was there and was recognized, the girls' soccer team. And at that same night, we had some folks going off to Special Olympics that were talking. And even in regular meetings without those kind of things, we need to do more of this. We're trying to do announcements so people know, hey, there's something going on next Wednesday. We'd love to have you go. It's a community event. It's in honor of so-and-so. It's being held here. Before we get into the ordinances and resolutions and all the things that we're obligated to do and business that we have to take care of, we want to remind everybody at our meetings that this is a community. This is a community, and there's a lot of positive things happening, as Bob mentioned, and don't lose sight of that. Yeah, there may be a battle further down on the agenda about spending money or whatever, but first and foremost, we are proud to live here, and we want you to know what's going on.
Anything from, closed session?
No, that's been an ongoing discussion, and I can't say a whole lot about it. I guess I'll just say that we have a development agreement that was signed, and this is something that I'm sure other cities deal with in some form or other from time to time. You look back and you say, okay, are all the conditions being met that were expected when the agreement was signed? And if not, what does that mean? Do you end up taking further action? Do you negotiate something with the developer? Do you take legal action? It's one of those things that you have to deal with, but there's nothing to report out at this time. I hope there will be maybe later in the year.
Okay.